Friends, why not we keep a honeybee? Humans have kept honeybee colonies, commonly in hives for millennia. Beekeepers collect honey, beeswax, propolis, pollen, and royal jelly from hives. Bees are also kept to pollinate crops and to produce bees for sale to other beekeepers. Depictions of humans collecting honey from wild bees date to 15,000 years ago. Efforts to domesticate them are shown in Egyptian art around 4,500 years ago. Simple hives and smoke were used. Jars of honey were found in the tombs of pharaohs such as Tutankhamen. From the 18th century, European understanding of the colonies and biology of bees allowed the construction of the movable comb hive so that honey could be harvested without destroying the colony. Among classical era authors, beekeeping with the use of smoke is described in the History of Animals written by Aristotle. The account mentions that bees die after stinging, that workers remove corpses from the hive and guard it. Castes including workers and non-working drones, but kings rather than queens. Predators including toads and bee-eaters and the waggle dance with the irresistible suggestion of Astonontai it and Paracolostain they watch. Beekeeping is described in detail by Virgil in his Eucogües. It is also mentioned in his Aeneid and in Pliny's Natural History. Bees play an important role in pollinating flowering plants and are the major type of pollinator in many ecosystems that contain flowering plants. It is estimated that 1/3 of the human food supply depends on pollination by insects, birds, and bats, most of which is accomplished by bees, whether wild or domesticated. Contract pollination has overtaken the role of honey production for beekeepers in many countries. From 1972 to 2006, feral honeybees declined dramatically in the US and they are now almost absent. The number of colonies kept by beekeepers declined slightly through urbanization, systematic pesticide use, tracheal and varroa mites, and the closure of beekeeping businesses. In 2006 and 2007, the rate of attrition increased and was described as colony collapse disorder. In 2010, invertebrate iridescent virus and the fungus Nosema ceranae were shown to be in every killed colony and deadly in combination. Winter losses increased to about 1.3 varroa mites were thought to be responsible for about half the losses. Apart from colony collapse disorder, losses outside the US have been attributed to causes including pesticide seed dressings such as clothianidin, imidacloprid, and thimethoxam. From 2013, the European Union restricted some pesticides to stop bee populations from declining further. In 2014, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report warned that bees faced increased risk of extinction because of global warming. However, farmers have focused on alternative solutions in order to mitigate these problems by raising native plants. They provide food for native bee pollinators like L. virchicki and L. leucoxanium, leading to less reliance on honeybee populations. Honey is a natural product produced by bees and stored for their own use, but its sweetness has always appealed to humans. Before domestication of bees was even attempted, humans were raiding their nest for their honey. Smoke was often used to subdue The bees and such activities are depicted in rock paintings in Spain, which have been dated to 15,000 BC. Indigenous people in many countries eat insects, including consuming the larvae and pupae of bees, mostly stingless bees. They also gather bee brood, the larvae, pupae, and surrounding cells for consumption. In the Indonesian dish Botok Toan from Central and East Java, bee larvae are eaten as a companion to rice after being mixed with shredded coconut, wrapped in banana leaves and steamed. Honeybees are used commercially to produce honey. They also produce some substances used as dietary supplements with possible health benefits: pollen, propolis, and royal jelly, though all of these can also cause allergic reactions. The painful stings of bees are mostly associated with the poison gland and the Daphos gland, which are abdominal exocrine glands containing various chemicals. The secretion of these glands could also be used for nest construction. Bees are flying insects of the Hymenoptera, which also includes ants, wasps, and sawflies. There are about 20,000 species of bees. Bees collect pollen from flowers. Bees can be found on all continents except Antarctica. Bees fall into four groups: honeybees, including the Africanized honeybee, bumble bees, stingless bees, solitary bees. The European honeybee, called Apis mellifera by biologists, is kept by humans for honey. Keeping bees to make honey is called beekeeping or apiculture. The earliest animal pollinated flowers were pollinated by insects such as beetles long before bees first appeared. Bees are different because they are specialized as pollination agents with behavioral and physical modifications that make pollination easier. Bees are generally better at the task than other pollinating insects such as beetles, flies, butterflies, and pollen wasps. The appearance of such floral specialists is believed to have driven the adaptive radiation of the angiosperms and in turn the bees themselves. Bees, like ants, are a specialized form of wasp. The ancestors of bees were wasps in a family which preyed on other insects. The switch from insect prey to pollen may have resulted from the capture of prey insects that were covered with pollen when they were fed to the wasp larvae. Similar behavior could be switched to pollen collection. This same evolutionary scenario has occurred within the waspoid wasps, where the group known as pollen wasps also evolved from predatory ancestors. A recently reported bee fossil of the genus Melitospex is considered an extinct lineage of pollen collecting Aphodia, sister group to the modern bees, and dates from the lower Cretaceous. Features of its morphology place it clearly within the bees, but it retains two unmodified ancestral traits of the legs which betray its origin. The issue is still under debate, and the phylogenetic relationships among bees families are poorly understood. It is usually easy to recognize that a particular insect is a bee. They differ from closely related groups such as wasps by having branched or plum-like setae, combs on the forelimbs for cleaning their antennae, small anatomical differences in the limb structure and the venation of the hind wings, and in females by having the seventh dorsal abdominal plate divided into two half plates. Behaviorally, one of the most obvious characteristics of bees is that they collect pollen to provide provisions for their young and have the necessary adaptations to do this. However, certain wasp species such as pollen wasps have similar behaviors, and a few species of bee scavenge from carapaces to feed their offspring. The world's largest species of bees, thought to be the Indonesian resin bee Megachili pluto, whose females can attain a length of 39 millimeters. The smallest species may be dwarf stingless bees in the tribe Meliponini, whose workers are less than 2 millimeters in length. A bee has a pair of large compound eyes which cover much of the surface of the head. Between and above these are three small simple eyes, ocelli, which provide information for the bee on light intensity. The antennae usually have 13 segments in males and 12 in females and are geniculate, having an elbow joint part way along. They house large numbers of sense organs that can detect touch, smell and taste, and small hair-like mechanoreceptors that can detect air movement so as to hear sounds. The mouth parts are adapted for both chewing and suckling by having both a pair of mandibles and long proboscis for sucking up nectar. The thorax has three segments, each with a pair of robust legs and a pair of membrane wings on the hind two segments. The front legs of corbiculate bees bear combs for cleaning the antenna, and in many species the hind legs bear pollen baskets, flattened sections with incurving hairs to secure the collected pollen. The wings are synchronized in flight, and the somewhat smaller hind wings connect to the forewings by a row of hooks along their margin which connect to a groove in the forewing. The abdomen has 9 segments, the hindermost 3 being modified into the sting. According to inclusive fitness theory, organisms can gain fitness not just through increasing their own reproductive output, but also that of close relatives. In evolutionary terms, individuals should help relatives when cost relatedness benefit. The requirements for eusociality are more easily fulfilled by haplodiploid species such as bees because of their unusual relatedness structure. In haplodiploid species, females develop from fertilized eggs and males from unfertilized eggs. Because a male is haploid, his daughters share 100% of his genes and 50% of their mothers. Therefore, they share 75% of the genes with each other. This mechanism of sex determination gives rise to what W.D. Hamilton termed super sisters, more closely related to their sisters than they would be to their own offsprings. Workers often do not reproduce, but they can pass on more of their genes by helping to raise their sisters as queens than they would be having their own offsprings, assuming they would produce similar numbers. This unusual situation has been proposed as an explanation of the multiple independent evolutions of eusociality within the Hymenoptera. However, some eusocial species such as termites are not haplodiploid. Conversely, all bees are haplodiploid, but not all the eusocial. And among eusocial species, many queens mate with multiple males, creating half-sisters that share only 25% of their genes. Haplodiploidity is thus neither necessary nor sufficient for eusociality, but monogamy, queens mating singly, is the ancestral trait for all eusocial species so far investigated. So it is likely that haplodiploidy contributed to the evolution of eusociality in bees. Bees may be solitary or may live in various types of communities. Sociality of several different types appears to have evolved independently many times within the bees. The most advanced of these are species with eusocial colonies. These are characterized by having cooperative brood care and a division of labor into reproductive and non-reproductive adults, plus overlapping generations. This division of labor creates specialized groups within eusocial societies, which are called castes. In some species, groups of cohabiting females may be sisters, and if there is a division of labor within the group, they are considered semisocial. The group is called eusocial if, in addition, the group consists of a mother, the queen, and her daughters, workers. When the castes are purely behavioral alternatives with no morphological differentiation other than size, the system is considered primitively eusocial, as in many paper wasps. When the castes are morphologically discrete, the system is considered highly eusocial. The true honeybees, genus Apis, of which there are 7 currently recognized species, are highly eusocial and are among the best known of all insects. Their colonies are established by swarms consisting of a queen and several hundred workers. There are 29 subspecies of one of these species, Apis mellifera, native to Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. Africanized bees are a hybrid strain of A. mellifera that escaped from experiments involving crossing European and African subspecies. They are extremely defensive. Stingless bees are also highly eusocial. They practice mass provisioning with complex nest architecture and perennial colonies also established via swarming. Many bumblebees are eusocial, similar to the eusocial Vespidae, such as hornets, in that the queen initiates a nest on her own rather than by swarming. Bumblebee colonies typically have from 50 to 200 bees at peak population, which occurs in mid to late summer. Nest architecture is simple, limited by the size of the pre-existing nest cavity, and colonies rarely last more than a year. In 2011, the International Union for Conservation of Nature set up the Bumblebee Specialist Group to review the threat status of all bumblebee species worldwide using the IUCN Red List criteria. There are many more species of the primitively eusocial than highly eusocial bees, but they have been studied less often. Most are in the family Halicetidae or sweet bees. Colonies are typically small, with a dozen or fewer workers on average. Queens and workers differ only in size, if at all. Most species have a single season colony cycle, even in the tropics, and only mated females hibernate. A few species have long active seasons and attain colony sizes in the hundreds, such as Halicuts, Hesperus. Some species are eusocial in parts of their range and solitary in others, or have a mix of eusocial and solitary nests in the same population. The orchid bees, Apidae, include some primitively eusocial species with smaller and similar biology. Some allodapine bees, Apidae, from primitively eusocial colonies. With progressive provisioning, a larva food is supplied gradually as it develops, as is the case in honeybees and some bumblebees. Most other bees, including familiar insects such as carpenter bees, leafcutter bees, and Martian bees, are solitary in the sense that every female is fertile and typically inhabits a nest she constructs herself. There is no division of labor, so these nests lack queens and worker bees for this species. Solitary bees typically produce neither honey nor beeswax. Solitary bees are important pollinators. They gather pollen to provision their nests with food for their brood. Often it is mixed with nectar to form a paste-like consistency. Some solitary bees have advanced types of pollen-carrying structures on their bodies. A very few species of solitary bees are being cultured for commercial pollination. Most of these species belong to a distinct set of genera, which are commonly known by their nesting behavior or preferences, namely carpenter bees, sweet bees, Martian bees, polyester bees, squash bees, dwarf carpenter bees, leafcutter bees, alkali bees, and digger bees. Most solitary bees nest in the ground in a variety of soil texture and conditions, while others create nests in hollow reeds or twigs, holes in woods. The female typically creates a compartment, a cell with an egg and some provisions for the resulting larva, then seals it off. A nest may consist of numerous cells. When the nest is in wood, usually the last, closer to the entrance, contain eggs that will become males. The adult does not provide care for the brood once the egg is laid and usually dies after making one or more nests. The males typically emerge first and are ready for mating when the females emerge. Solitary bees are either stingless or very unlikely to sting, only in self-defense if ever. While solitary females each make individual nests, some species such as the European Mason bee, Hoplites, Anthocopoids, and the Dawson's burying bees, Amegilla dawsoni, are gregarious, preferring to make nests near others of the same species and giving the appearance of the being social. Large groups of solitary bees nests are called aggregations to distinguish them from colonies. In some species, multiple females share a common nest, but each makes and provisions her own cells independently. This type of group is called communal and is not uncommon. The primary advantage appears to be that a nest entrance is easier to defend from predators and parasites when there are multiple females using that same entrance on a regular basis. The life cycle of bee, be it a solitary or social species, involves the laying of an egg, the development through several molds of a legless larva, a pupation stage during which the insect undergoes complete metamorphosis, followed by the emergence of a winged adult. Most solitary bees and bumblebees in temperate climates overwinter as adults or pupae and emerge in spring when increasing numbers of flowering plants come into bloom. The males usually emerge first and search for females with which to mate. The sex of a bee is determined by whether or not the egg is fertilized. After mating, a female stores the sperm and determines which sex is required at the time each individual egg is laid. Fertilized eggs producing female offspring and unfertilized eggs males. Tropical bees may have several generations in a year and no diapause stage. The egg is generally oblong, slightly curved and tapering at one end. In the case of solitary bees, each one is laid in a cell with a supply of mixed pollen and nectar next to it. This may be rolled into a pellet or placed in a pile and is known as mass provisioning. In social species of bee, there is progressive provisioning with the larva being fed regularly while it grows. The nest varies from a hole in the ground or in wood in solitary bees to a substantial structure with wax combs and bumblebees and honeybees. The larvae are generally whitish grubs, roughly oval and bluntly pointed at both ends. They have 15 segments and spiracles in each segment for breathing. They have no legs but are able to move within the confines of the cell. The flight of bees could not be explained by fixed wing calculations, but that one shouldn't be surprised that the results of the calculations don't square with reality. This has led to a common misconception that bees violate aerodynamic theory, but in fact, it merely confirms that bees do not engage in fixed wing flight and that their flight is explained by other mechanics, such as those used by helicopters. Honeybees communicate by the waggle dance, in which a worker indicates the location of a food source to other workers in the hive. He demonstrated that bees can recognize a desired compass direction in 3 different ways: by the sun, by the polarization pattern of the blue sky, and by the Earth's magnetic field. Sun is the preferred or main compass. The other mechanisms are used under cloudy skies or inside a dark beehive. Bees navigate using spatial memory with a rich map-like organization. Bees are able to sense the presence of desirable flowers through ultraviolet patterning on flowers. Floral odors and even electromagnetic fields. Once landed, a bee then uses nectar quality and pollen test to determine whether to continue visiting similar flowers. In rare case, a plant species may only be effectively pollinated by a single bee species, and some plants are endangered, at least in part, because their pollinator is also threatened. Many bees are aposematically colored, typically orange and black, warning of their ability to defend themselves with a powerful sting. As such, they are models for Batesian mimicry by non-stinging insects such as bee flies, robber flies, and hover flies, all of which gain a measure of protection by superficially looking and behaving like bees. Brood parasites occur in several bee families, including the apid subfamily Nomadinae. Females of these bees lack pollen collecting structures and do not construct their own nests. They typically enter the nests of pollen collecting species and lay their eggs in cells provisioned by the host bee. Specialist ambues, predators of visitors to flowers, include crab spiders, which wait on flowering plants for pollinating insects, predatory bugs, and praying mantises, some of which wait motionless, aggressive mimics camouflaged as flowers. Beewalls are large wasps that habitually attack bees. The ethologist Nico Tinbergen estimated that a single colony of the beewolf, Philanthus tringalum, might kill several thousand honeybees in a day. All the prey he observed were honeybees. Other predatory insects that sometimes catch bees include robber flies and dragonflies. Honeybees are affected by parasites including acarine and varroa mites. However, some bees are believed to have a mutualistic relationships with mites. Lastly, we see the bees and humans. In mythology and folklores, three bee maidens with the power of divination and the speaking truth are described in Homer's Hymen to Hermes, and the food of the gods is identified as honey. The bee maidens were originally associated with Apollo and are probably not correctly identified with the theory. Honey, according to a Greek myth, was discovered by a nymph called Melissa, and honey was offered to the Greek gods from Mycenaean times. Bees were associated too with the Delphic oracle, and the prophetess was sometimes called a bee. The image of community of honeybees has been used from ancient to modern times in Aristotle and Plato, in Virgil and Seneca, in Erasmus and Shakespeare, Tolstoy, and by political and social theorists such as Bernard Mandeville and Karl Marx as a model for human society. In English folklore, bees would be told of important events in the household in a custom known as tailing the bees. In literature, Beatrix Potter's illustrated book, The Tale of Mrs. Titlemouse, 1910, features Babbitty Bumble and her brood. Y.B. Yeats' a poem, The Lake Isle of Innisfree, 1888, contains the couplet, 9 bent rows will I have there, a hive for the honey bee, and live alone in the bee-loved glade. At the time, he was living in Bedford Park in the west of London. Kit Williams' treasure hunt book, The Bee on the Comb, 1984, uses bees and beekeeping as part of its story and puzzle. Sue Monk Kidd's The Secret Life of Bees, 2004, and the 2009 film starring Dakota Fanning tells the story of a girl who escapes her abusive home and finds her way to live with family of beekeepers, the boat writes. Dave Golson's A Sting in the Tail. The playwright Lalin Paul's Fantasy the Bees. The humorous 2007 animated film Bee Movie and user Jerry Seinfeld's. Thanks for watching, friends.